All right, Tony, we're recording. How you doing, brother?
Good, you?
Very well, mate. Very well.
Good.
And
Thanks for having me, man. It's good
yeah,
to
you're
see you.
welcome. You're welcome. And this is a good conversation to get into, I think, as we enter into the next halving epoch, as a lot more newcomers are going to come to Bitcoin. And I think it's very important that a lot of people understand a lot of the basic things, a lot of the mistakes people have made in the past and learn from them. And this is something that you and the team at Bitcoin Way, I believe, are trying to do. But I won't put words in your mouth. Why don't you introduce yourself and your mission at the Bitcoin
Sure.
Way and what it is you hope to achieve?
Sure. Well, personally, I come from 25 years of cybersecurity, encryption, and privacy, and I've been into the Bitcoin space for it's about 6 years now. Our mission really is to help fast track the onboarding of anyone into Bitcoin proper self custody to ensure that they understand all the necessary requirements into why they're doing it in the first place and how to do it. A lot of folks that we have spoken to, they stay away from Bitcoin for many reasons. First and foremost, there's a lot of like nonsense FUD that keeps them away. But those that actually know something about it stay away because of the technical aspects. They fear it to death, thinking that they're going to do something wrong along the way and potentially lose their funds, which is, what's it's a real valid concern. It can happen. It has certainly happened before. And so we put this team together in order to remove this obstacle. So for anyone that doesn't want to do the work technically themselves, or perhaps is not comfortable watching a YouTube video, even though there's plenty of amazing resources online that people can follow for free, um, a lot of folks are simply not comfortable doing that, and they prefer that somebody else does it just in case they make a mistake. Like they don't want to assume that responsibility. So this is where we come in, and we break things down in bite-sized pieces for everyone. I mean, we take anyone from zero to complete full self-custody extremely meticulously. We leave nothing out. We don't take any shortcuts. We don't try to fast forward the process to save time or money or what have you. We do it properly, because at the end of the day, if you're going to be saving, a considerable amount of money or potentially your life savings, you want to be sleeping well at night, not wondering, did I miss something or is something missing in my setup? And that's essentially what we do. And up to recently, we recently put out a new service, privacy focused collaborative custody. And that's, because of a lot of requests about it for folks that just want the peace of mind of knowing that there's a backup key somewhere. Now, the difference between us and others doing, a similar service is that, one, we are completely private and non-custodial in the sense, like, we're not a financial institution, so we don't require any of the overbearing KYC headaches and all of that stuff. And second of all, by design, the platform that we work with is we strategically collaborated with Nunchuck on this. So Nunchuck is known to be a fully open source, non-custodial private platform. And that's the platform we chose specifically for this purpose, because it aligns with our vision that, your private info is yours, and you're not automatically, obliged to give it up just because you want to use a service. So we put that out. It comes with a whole bunch of advanced security features. So someone that wants to upgrade their setup from a single sig to multi-sig, we handhold them through the entire process. I mean, you literally don't do anything. We get on a call with you. We tell you, all right, this is where you go. This is what you do. And by the time we're done, you are bulletproof. And knowing that there's a backup key offsite, so essentially that's what we are. You think of us as like an offsite key. If something happens to one of yours, well, there's a key recovery process that you can follow to easily retrieve your key, and life goes on. At no point in time is it technically possible for anyone outside you, the user, to sign or withdraw anything. So that addresses the main concerns that folks have. Why should we trust you and all of that stuff? Well, you can trust us because we cannot do anything, and by design, we cannot spend a single cent. We cannot withdraw anything. The full control in that regard is always in the hands of the user, and that's by design because we want no responsibility in any of it.
All right. So there's a lot to unpack here. And I think what we'll try and do is keep it very low level to begin with, and then build
Sure.
layers up on top. So for those that have been listening to the show a long time and are already down, the self-storage rabbit hole, which I hope they are. Maybe we're going over a few bits and pieces that they already know, but it's always good to have a refresher, right? But for any newbies that are coming in on a run, what are these guys talking about? Self storage, what cold storage? These are weird names, right? Even the word wallet is a little bit misleading. But it's what we got. This is the language we have, and it's just a matter of upskilling and uplearning and rethinking personal accountability over your savings. So let's get really just basic. What is a hardware wallet when you
Well,
when you are talking to people that you're helping?
Well, a hardware wallet is essentially one of the main elements in your journey to self-custody. It's essentially your signing device. Your wallet's it's a piece of hardware, sort of piece of hardware like this one. There's many different brands out there, obviously, that we use to generate what's known as an air-gapped wallet. So, and that's where you safeguard your Bitcoin. Essentially, the cold wallet is a signing device that never goes online. This is, by default how we configure them all, and where you safeguard all your funds. We can create as many wallets as you like. A lot of folks like to break them down into categories. Like, for example, those that have bought KYC Bitcoin, they put them in one wallet, and those that have bought no KYC Bitcoin, we put them in another wallet, since you never want to mix the two together. So we configure these cold wallets, per the needs and use of every individual, so that it's done properly. And then once that's in place, we show them how to use it, going through test runs, how to send, how to receive, the basics of all of this. And then once they're comfortable with this, then we move them to phase two, which is getting a Bitcoin node installed, in every location. Because even though it's an option, it's not really an option if you want to be fully sovereign and private. Without a node, you're neither. And the reasons for that is that, well, if you don't have one, you cannot be 100% sure that the Bitcoin blockchain that you're connecting to hasn't been tampered with. That's one. Two, you're leaving fingerprints of everything and anything that you're doing with your Bitcoin all over the place. When you're connecting to other nodes, public servers, there's a trace of your activity. This may not seem like a big deal now, but once Bitcoin hits like crazy numbers, you're going to wish, you had accounted for all of these little transactions that you didn't think twice about now. Yeah, and so we push that, very strongly in the beginning, because we believe that it's in everyone's best interest to have both. And once the knowledge truly sinks in, it'll click at some point for them as to why it was so heavily pushed.
Okay, wow, straight to the node. All right, so you take them hardware wallet first. You teach them how to set up the hardware wallet, extract the private keys, write them down, keep them safe, yada yada yada. Then straight into the node. So what are you suggesting node wise? I'm sure it depends on the technical abilities of the individual, but let's just say very low technical knowledge or appetite, just want a plug and play style solution.
Okay. Well, I mean, when folks come to us, it's essentially because they don't want to do any of the work. So it really doesn't matter which one we recommend. As far as we're concerned, we're not financially incentivized to recommend any product, by the way. I just have to make that very clear. We base our recommendations on tests that we do in-house. So we test, a lot of these brands that are out there. We try to literally break them to see how well they hold up to our tests. And those that pass well, we put them on a list and we recommend them. We only work with and only recommend open source or verifiable source projects. We do not even consider anything else, anything closed source, anything that participates in censorship or chain analysis on any level are automatically disqualified at the Bitcoin way. We really stick to the ethos of the white paper. There's no gray zones, as far as we're concerned. So either we do it right or we're not going to do it. So it's as simple as that. So as far as which nodes and which wallets we recommend, well, we put them on a list, those that we really like, and the individual picks their preference. I mean, they all vary a little bit in price. I mean, they're pretty much within a range of a certain price, but some folks have a preference, for one over the other. Regardless of which one they pick, they come back to us once they received it, and we get on a one-to-one call, and we actually do the entire setup while explaining all the steps along the way. So it's not just like we do the work and that's it. We break it down into 5-year-old English language so that they understand what it is that we're actually doing. And then once it's put in place, once it's set up, we go through several test runs together just to make sure that the knowledge is really solidified, that they're not just saying yes just to be polite. We put them through a series of like quizzes just to make sure that they've actually understood properly. And for the most part, they all do. I mean, we haven't had anyone yet that by the end of the session has not understood the basics of how to send and how to receive, and why it's so pertinent that they do all of this with a Bitcoin node at their location. They get it, that whether they're home, whether they're on vacation, whether they're on the moon, as long as they're online, all their activities is being routed via that node, and that they're private in that sense.
Right. Okay. So I remember setting up my node, God knows how many years ago, that was buying different parts off of different websites, getting it all together, clicking it all together, then running the initial Bitcoin download. That was a pain in the balls. And that there weren't that many people that were doing it. I got shamed into doing it by Matt Odell and Bitcoin Q&A, and I love them for
Yeah.
it. And my God, I had no end of problems with it and trying to get my head around it. And a big shout out to Wizard of Oz, who was on a different time zone to me, the other side of the planet in Australia. He would get on Zoom calls with me. He's like, "It's all right, mate. Just chill out. Just SSH into your node." I'm like, fucking say SSH one more time because I don't even know what that means. Like,
What the hell is SSH?
So
Well,
now,
the,
but
the DI,
nowadays,
yeah,
are there solutions like off the shelf solutions where somebody can just go
yeah,
and pay 150 euros or dollars for a node to be shipped to them?
yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, we recommend the some brands from reputable manufacturers. We put them on a list for those that don't want to build their own nodes. I mean, you can still build it. It'll cost you less, but the biggest problem that folks have with building their own nodes is buying the right components, like the right parts. There's a lot of similar parts. Some of them are lower quality than others. And if you're dealing with some very cheap, components, they will fail. And when they fail, you start getting errors, and that's when the whole mess becomes a headache. So for those that want to do it themselves, we've compiled a list of, like top tier accessories and components that you'd need to buy. You can buy them from anywhere you like. We don't sell them, obviously. Like places like Amazon and what have you have plenty of them. And then when you put them together, you should be good to go. All right. But those that don't want to do it, I mean, statistically, 1 out of 12 folks that come to us want to build their own node. Most of them will just go out and buy it.
Mm.
And then, it's easier because fortunately these days, a lot of these manufacturers, they ship their nodes with the Bitcoin blockchain fully downloaded, or at least downloaded in a big part, so you don't have to spend like a week, or depending on how fast your internet connection is, waiting for it. So on some occasions we were able to set it up on the same day as the consult, rather than starting up the setup, waiting until it completes, and then finishing it then.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, we have come a long way. I've not been updated on that because yeah, mine seems to be running okay. Although I'm sure if we were to do a session, you'd be like, "What have you set up here? This is shocking."
Well, look, I mean, this is essentially the being your own bank. It's not a gimmick, right? It's not just a thing that we're doing now to be cool because it's a new Bitcoin thing. That's not what it is. We really emphasize the fact that everyone in Bitcoin should be taking this thing extremely seriously. Like I say it all the time, you should be guarding the setup with your life. Because if you're putting your life savings in it, or a considerable amount of it in there, and at some point very soon, it's going to be worth, like a crap load more than it's worth today, you're not going to want to be very nonchalant about this. You're going to want to make sure that this is like bulletproof and airtight, every second of every day. And so we base our setups and our configurations around the fact that Bitcoin is already worth $100 million. Like, as far as I'm concerned, in my head, the mindset that I take with all this is that Bitcoin is already worth $100 million. How am I going to protect it for this person? And we tackle it this way, so that when that day comes, this individual sleeps the same way they've been sleeping today, they'll sleep then, no problem. Now, keep in mind that this is not a set it and forget it setup, regardless of whether you do it yourself or whether we help you with it. And we make that very clear. I mean, Bitcoin is progressing technology, and you need to stay on top of it in order to stay relevant. As things progress, they become easier. There's updates, upgrades, fine tunings, all that stuff that's going to be required. You need to do them because, so that your setup remains, as airtight as it was the day we set it up in 20 years. And, sometimes we may have to modify things. And sometimes you may have to change the hardware, if something really, substantial comes out. We stay on top of it. And especially with regards to those that have inheritance plans. I mean, you definitely want those to be relevant, when the time comes. So if we set it up today and you pass away in 50, 60 years, well, and you haven't looked at it then, there's a good chance that a few components may not work as described, right? And then those coming behind to access your funds will have a situation they may not be able to deal with. Mm-hmm. So we provide these ongoing services so that we ensure that everyone we deal with remains informed as to what's going on. And we let them know that there's X, Y, and Z that needs to be, done every once in a while, whenever the case may be. And if they don't want to do it, well, we do it for them. This way they know that, they're still good.
And recently there's been, just in the news the last couple of days, the ledger, poor old ledger, again in the headlines for the wrong reasons.
Of course.
Somebody made a Ledger Live app and put it on the Microsoft store, as far as I'm aware. And people downloaded it from the Microsoft store and, had their Bitcoin stolen. So this is the kind of knowledge that still isn't in people's minds, that could. And here's the thing. People using a ledger might actively be trying to move coins off of that device because of the data breach and the fact that all of the addresses were leaked. So if you are listening to this and you do have a ledger, and this is nothing, I'm not bashing ledger, I'm just pushing facts out there at people. And I know for a fact that if that was your first wallet and you went through all of that heartache back in the day, that first time you ever made a transaction, these are the first words you ever wrote down, you're very sticky to undoing any of that, because your level of education back in those days doing that for the first time was where it was. It's not where it is now. And it's still very difficult, I think, for people to sweep all of that Bitcoin off of one device onto another. Well, that's not even the right terminology, right? Because for the newbies, the Bitcoin does not live on the device. The Bitcoin lives on the blockchain. No. The device is correct. The signing tool that makes the transaction. Again, mindfuck when people come to realize that. So what would you advise people that are perhaps sticky to that first wallet, perhaps sticky to those first 12 words? Maybe they've remembered them, they've put hours of time into doing that. They're going to be reluctant to upgrade to a different device, to a new private key, to make that transaction, to leave a footprint on the blockchain. These are all conversations I'm sure you're having with slightly more advanced users that are coming to you as well.
Well, look, I mean, these are valid points, and at some point they're going to have no choice but to take that step if they want to protect their money. Now, this is where I've always had an issue with third-party custodians and closed source projects. I'm not saying that the folks at Ledger are bad people or have bad intentions. The problem with them is that they have to play by the rules of those that don't have good intentions. Okay. And specific to something like a ledger that's a closed source project, how do I know that they're actually doing what they say they're doing behind the scenes? I have no idea. And how do you want me to trust my life savings in a product that can rug me at any point in time? Okay. I'd never do it. And when folks come to us and tell us, well, I have my stuff on a ledger, from a moral and ethical point of view, we cannot advise them and tell them, okay, yeah, you're cool. No, we can't. We don't tell them get off the ledger. We tell them if you leave them on a ledger, this is the risk. You decide. All of them get off the ledger. Okay, because you'd be insane to stay on something that you do not control, especially if in one firmware update, boom, your private keys are gone. It's not a joke. So that's why we heavily push the open source or verifiable source, so that there's none of that nonsense going on. And we push the self-custody, even with the collaborative custody services that we recently introduced. It took us a while to actually put it out there because we're really pro individual responsibility. But we found a way to do collaborative custody that maintains that infrastructure where the user remains in full control no matter what. And that essentially our co-custody is really just a backup key. So there's no risk for anyone on that sense. We have no responsibility on that sense. So our hands are conscious and conscious is clear. But the security model is seriously upgraded from single sig to multi-sig. Inheritance plans are like exponentially, enhanced. There's many flexible plans that are available, on the collaborative custody side of things. It's really well done, and we streamline the entire process. So whether you're an advanced user or a complete newbie, it makes no difference to us because we will guide you through the entire process. If you know what you're doing, all right, we'll spend a little less time together going through the steps because you already know, where we're headed. But even if you're not, we have this process like streamlined so well that within a couple of hours you are airtight. I will guide you from beginning to end. There's nothing for you to do except follow a series of well thought out steps that cover everything. And then once that's done, we run through tests. You see for yourself that everything is the way it's supposed to be. You have all your questions, Q&A back and forth. We're on standby if ever you need us, and it's done. Now you know that your money is secured in the way it's supposed to be. You can sleep well at night. Should you forget anything, we have private groups that we create for every individual to create a safe space of communication in case you wake up in the middle of the night and you have a panic attack. You can shoot out a message. Someone will always respond to you. So we know that this is a transition, that it's going to take some time before folks, get used to the fact that being responsible for your money is normal. Now it's abnormal because we've never done it before. We've never had to do it before. But there's going to come a point in time where it's going to become, yeah, man, are you crazy letting somebody else take care of your money? What are you, insane? This is going to be the street talk now. And they're going to study us in 100 years. They're going to study us as like the dumbest people out there, that actually believed in toilet paper that somebody else controls and decides what you can do with it. It's going to be like the joke of the century.
Yeah, the fact that your wage gets paid directly into a bank account that
Yeah, and
only gives you X amount of access to, and then as soon as it hits their deposit, they can times it by the magnitude of 9 or 10 onto their own balance sheet and fractional reserve it, and then loan it out. Like they're using your energy and skills and labor to counterfeit, and your salary to counterfeit themselves more money on which to make usury. Like it's nuts. It
it's
truly is.
blatant theft. It's blatant theft. That's all it is. Nothing else to call it but theft. And we've been okay with it. This is the worst part. But once you realize how stupid that is, this is where you go down the rabbit hole and you realize, hold on a second, like something's not right here. And I've been okay with this for so long. Like, what's wrong with me? There's nothing
Mm.
wrong with you. But if you're born into that system, you're brainwashed from day one into believing that this is how it is. So to come out of this takes considerable amount of effort, and well, more than effort, willingness to accept that maybe I've been told a lie and something else is wrong, and maybe that person telling me this is not so crazy, but I've been misinformed all my life, and now it's time for me to snap out of whatever delusion I've been living in and relearn the truth. And this is what I see more people doing. The more people start talking about Bitcoin, getting into Bitcoin, coming to us for self custody, asking questions, it's a very bullish sign, because
Mm.
these are not tech folks, these are not advanced people, these are regular mom and dad type folks, grocery store owners, supermarket owners, gas clerks, like regular folks. How do I do this Bitcoin? Can I keep it on my phone? Is it expensive? Like all these questions. It doesn't really matter what the question is, but the fact that they're asking about it is already a very bullish sign, because a few years ago it would never cross their mind.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So, collaborative custody. Let's talk about the setup you've got going on there. And for those people that aren't aware, multi-signature. This has been a service that's been around for a handful of years now. Certain companies in the space can offer that for you, whereby you would have, let's say, three hardware wallets. You would keep two. One other party would keep one. And the only way you can make any transactions would be to have two signing devices. So if you lost one, you always had the extra backup. Is that how you're working it, or are you working it in a slightly different way?
Well, multi-sig is, you're right. It's been around for a long time, but it's initially I've always been like pro the opinion that most people don't need it, because most people that are not technical, multisig will add a level of complexity to their setup that at some point along the line, if they're not very careful, they're going to screw up and potentially, lose funds. So for most folks, multi-sig was not the right option. Single sig done properly with, the right tips and practices and the setup in place can be extremely secure for most folks, especially those that don't have the comfort doing with the technical stuff, at least at this point in time. Maybe in a few years things will become much more simplified, but if we're talking just today, it still requires a minimum level of technical know-how. Now, the collaborative custody, what that does is that, first of all, we do all the technical work for you, so you don't have to do anything. You just have to acquire the necessary hardware that you need, and you can pick whichever one you want, obviously from the recommended list of hardware. Once it's set up, you can do 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5, as much as you want. Obviously, the higher you go, the more complex it goes. For the advanced plan, on the one that involves inheritance planning, it's a 2 out of 4 multi-sig. But essentially on the standard plan, the one that most folks usually start off with, it's a 2 out of 3. So they hold two signing devices, two cold wallets essentially that are configured. And there's a third one that's held, a backup key that we hold offsite. So to sign any transaction requires two keys at all times. So since we only have one, we can't sign anything. So the user is always the one in charge of withdrawing, sending funds, left, doing whatever they want. They have the both keys. What they do with these two signing devices, that's their business. They can keep them to themselves. They can spread them in multiple geographic locations. Like they can keep one at home, send it one to a friend or a trusted member. That's up to them. But we go through a series of questions with these folks to make sure that they've accounted for perhaps scenarios that they've never thought of. So for those that come to us and say, well, yeah, I've got them in 3 different locations. Well, the first question I ask them, in case of an emergency, do you have access to these locations like right away? If the answer is like a hesitating one, or it's not an instant yes, well, then maybe it's not the right setup for you. Well, the folks, holding those keys at those remote locations, do you have absolute trust in them? Will they lose them? Will they stop talking to you one day? Then what are you going to do? Like all these silly things become a big problem when they become a problem. So we ask these questions. And if you don't give a convincing answer, well, then I tell you, well, you know what? I see flaws or weak points in your current situation. Maybe we should look at something else. And that's where the whole cybersecurity experience comes in, because then we get into a conversation, and eventually we tailor something that balances the practicality aspect of things with the security aspect of things. And the end result becomes unique to you. So there's no off the shelf solution that we use to secure our users. And that's extremely important, because if we were to do two separate people and one of them decides they want to steal your funds, assuming that you've been set up the same way that we set them up, they'd fail, because there's always going to be something about you that's different from them. And we do this with everyone. Sure, there's points of commonality, obviously, but there's always going to be one or two distinguishing things that'll separate you from the other person that we've dealt with, and that's an added security plus in your favor.
And how often do you have couples come on? Because I know there's in the Bitcoin space, we're very it's a man heavy space, and we want to bring our spouses down the rabbit hole. But as soon as you show them something technical, like, oh yeah, all you got to do is sign a. What are you saying? Like, we
Well,
can't
you're
teach. But do you
you
find it's easier
yeah.
to get people across the line if it's a collaborative call in that way?
No, I mean, we have folks from all age groups come to us. Most folks are usually, I'd say, middle age, let's say like mid 40s and up. Um, Most of them to date are male, but we have a lot more females coming in, either on their own or with their partners. Surprisingly, the females listen better than the male counterparts that assume they know what the next step is going to be, and they sort of like try to skip ahead. Um, the females, they don't usually do this. They're like, okay, what's the next step? All right, do this, do this, do this, do that. And
It's
so,
just like
but
when you build flat pack furniture with your wife, right?
yeah, yeah,
She's
maybe.
still like reading the she's still
Maybe.
reading how many screws, and and you're like hammering. She's like, well, stop, just stop. We haven't even checked. We've got everything.
So that becomes like a funny situation, but we laugh it off. We handle it well, but ultimately, we don't skip any of the steps, regardless of what the other individual wants to do or tries to do. They can't. I mean, there are certain, you have to respect the order of things that need to be done, and we follow through ultimately until it's completed, and then we run through the test, and then everybody's happy. And yeah, so I mean, this has been our formula to date. The collaborative custody services is becoming more popular now. Not that more people are becoming aware of it. There's this sense of comfort that they have, knowing that if they lose one of their keys, it's no big deal. So, and at the same time, knowing that only they can spend their funds, that nobody else can do this, I like that setup. Like if I was a customer going to someone, I would do that setup without hesitation, because I know I have full control of my funds. If I screw up or something happens to one of my keys, I can bring the one down from backup. I'm good. And you can improve that. I mean, if with a 2 out of 3, you can lose one key and be okay. But if you lose both keys or something happens to both of them, you're done. If you want more redundancy, then we can bump this up to a 3 out of 5. We can go as high as you want, but obviously that adds more and more complexity to your setup. But technically, sky's the limit. Like, I mean, we can go as complicated as you'd like,
Mm-hmm.
or as secure as you'd like. We haven't had any insane scenarios yet, but should they arise, it's no problem.
That's the thing, man. Like the insane scenarios. Just because timely, I saw Eric Wall tweeting yesterday about a family or a couple being held hostage in Sweden, and apparently this has happened a few times in Sweden, to torture and beat up or kidnap or harass people in their homes in order for them to give up their crypto holdings in quotes, whether that's Bitcoin or any of their other holdings. What's the answer to that? I mean, this can obviously go a long way, but I don't know that there is anything to solve that other than carry a gun on you at all times, which isn't convenient.
Well, yeah, that is an unfortunate reality of certain parts of the world. I mean, technically, there are ways to protect against this. But if somebody's going to break into your house and beat you up because they don't believe you, well, that's another situation that has to be solved, in a different manner. So, but from a tech point of view, we can definitely solidify the setup to resist all of these things. Like even like we can set you up in a way that even if you wanted to give it up, you couldn't, because you'd be missing part of the puzzle. So, but does that mean you won't get beat up because they don't believe you? Not necessarily. So, how do you account for this? I mean, I don't have an answer for that.
Mm.
Obviously, everyone has the right to protect themselves, whatever that entails. I know I would protect myself if somebody were to come attack me. Well, it's going to come down to either them or me. There's no compromising at that point. But everyone's different. Everybody's personality differs. Their how they deal with traumatic situations like this is very personal. Hopefully, no one has to be put in a situation like this. Don't flaunt it. I mean, one of the most basic things you can do is simply not flaunt it. I'm pretty sure once Bitcoin becomes worth, considerably more, almost half the Twitter space will disappear simply because no one wants to bring attention to themselves anymore. Not that their trace is completely gone, but no one's going to be blabbing about it as much anymore.
I only
The
do this
people got,
podcast for educational purposes. It's
yeah,
not
of
like I own any
course.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course. Neither do I. I mean, we're here, just to help folks understand what this tech is about. But once you see like the number go up, phenomenon, I'm pretty sure that there'll be a lot more quiet on the on the horizon. I may be wrong, but that's like my gut instinct tells me this.
Well, it's not if we find out, it's when we find out, as you and I both know. Okay, so that's kind of like the main offering then. I'm helping people get on board and get over their technical barriers to entry and get set up correctly. So that's a brilliant service. But how did you guys come to set this up? Who are your partners? What's the backstory? Who are you guys? This is obviously something that people would want to know before they booked
Yeah,
a
of
call or
course.
got in touch.
Of course, we met. We're three co-founders of the Bitcoin Way. It's me, Andy, and Ahmed. We met on Nostr. I mean, I was doing this freelance for many years before I met Andy and Ahmed, and they contacted me on Nostr one day because they saw, I guess, one of my tweets and what have you, and we got into a conversation, and one thing led to another, and I told them, "Well, look, in my opinion, there's a massive need for help in that department because most folks don't know what they're doing and they're not going to sit down and watch a YouTube video, no matter how amazing and easy to follow it is. They're just not going to do it. So we can provide a service to remove that apprehension, to remove that fear by doing the work for them. And we're all Bitcoiners. We all aligned, instantly on that same vision, and we put the team together, and here we are. We made our first public debut at Bitcoin Prague. It was a very, very successful debut, much more than we anticipated. Simply because when folks came up to us and asked us, what do you do? When we explained to them what we do, they're like, oh my God, you know what? This is exactly, what I need. This is exactly what I'm looking for, because I'm not going to do it. It's as simple as that. And so, we took it from there, and we're putting out content regularly on social media and, on other venues as well. We have a very strong network of people that we interact with on a daily basis, to push the message, to let folks know that if you need the help, I mean, we're here. And another thing that we push heavily, sort of like to distinguish us, from the others, is that we account for elements that don't directly impact Bitcoin. So, for example, like we check your network, we check your computer, we can check your phones. All of these things interface with your Bitcoin. So you can't just ignore them and focus on a cold wallet and a node thinking that's it. That's not true. We can lock down your network, your security settings, on an internet and DNS levels. Are they secure? Are you susceptible to getting a phishing link on your computer and clicking on it? If you are, your network's not secure, because there are ways to mitigate that and prevent this so that you won't get that phishing email to begin with, even if it was sent to you. Or even if you did click on it, it would be automatically blocked by your network. So, like the network protects you from inadvertent mistakes. Do you have such a system in place? Most folks do not. We provide that service. Is your phone secure? Have you installed all sorts of rubbish on it without thinking? Are you using that same phone for your Bitcoin? If the answer is yes, okay, well, we need to have a conversation to minimize the risks on the device. The phone, maybe not. Well, the phone, I mean, if you have an Android, that's a big story on its own. On a Mac, it's not so bad because of the closed ecosystem. But on an Android, you have to be very careful what you're doing, because it's the Wild West there in terms of security. It's a mess. Your computer is the same thing. Is your computer secure? I mean, have you been downloading all sorts of funny business for the past several years, and you're using that same machine to transact in your Bitcoin? How do you know what's on it? Do you have any keyloggers on your machine? Most people don't even know what a keylogger is. And that's the most frightening part, is that they're not even aware of what to look for. I think I mentioned this to you before. There are USB cables on the market that have built-in web servers. The people buy them all the time because they're cheap. They think they're getting a deal. You plug it into your computer, everything's being siphoned out. Who knows what you're saving on that machine? Any data that you put on it that has an active keylogger and web server on it, it's extracting that data. So these things are important, and they will become more important again as the price goes up. The attempts to steal it is going to go up along with it, and I don't think the attacks are going to come in a physical factor. Like no one's going to come up to folks and start beating them up on the head with hammers. It's not it's going to happen, because it's not efficient and it's not as profitable. It's much more lucrative to throw a product like this out on the market, have millions of people buy it, and you siphon out the data and hope you get lucky with a few. And you probably will get lucky with more than a few. So this is how I see things, progressing as the value as this asset increases, and those that don't have it ultimately want it at any price. So we account for these things. We provide the services that help mitigate these risks and protect against them.
So you're specifically talking about here like USB or USB-C charging leads that you're buying to replace the original one that's either broken or something, and you find a cheap one on Amazon or wherever.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Physically, the problem with them is that physically they look identical and they do what they're supposed to do. So if you're buying a USB cable to charge your phone, when you plug it in, it is going to charge your phone. It's not like it's not going to charge it. It's going to do exactly what you think it's going to do. And it's going to look identical to the cable that you replaced it with. But it comes with an extra gift that you're not aware of. So when you plug it into your computer, that gift becomes active. And some of the more advanced ones now, have a remote built-in self-destruct. So if the remote person suspects that you have become aware of something, they can send one command, blow up the cable, stop working, game over. You have no trace of anything anymore. That exists. So how do you detect these things? Well, there's special equipment that you use that's designed to detect against this nonsense. And if it lights up, you don't touch that cable. For cables that you use, that's why a lot of cold wallets, they come with power only cables. There's no data. That's specifically for that reason, right? So you have to be careful. I mean, most folks are not tech folks. They don't think about these things. And I mean, I don't blame them. There's like a lot of information, but it doesn't change the fact that it's, it's important, especially if you are, again, safeguarding your money in your own custody. You need to be sure that you think of everything. And if you can't think of everything, we will help you think of them. And, we will help you make sure that, all these elements are in place.
So cybersecurity was your background, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. That was your fiat job before. You might still do it. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
What?
I'm still involved, not as much, not as heavily as before, but yeah,
Mhm.
of course. I
So what?
mean,
How did you get yourself into that business? Like you look like a man of probably around the same age as me, maybe in your 40s and your 50s. Uh,
yeah.
right.
Do you remember IRC? The
IRC.
yeah, internet relay chats. That was back then, sort of the beginning times of the internet.
I didn't use them
Ye-
unless, of course, you. What would have been the? Was that like MSN Messenger and things like that? Or
No, it was more like, internet relay chats. There were like boards where people would get online and like they'd see a whole bunch of names and people would chat with each other and all that stuff.
all right, no,
Anyhow, it was like,
I
yeah,
wasn't there.
it was like online communities of people chatting each other. I got involved with this at a very young age. Like I think I was 12. I was somehow fascinated by this whole underground thing. So my learning experience actually came from those that you see on TV, like those hackers, those people that that those unnamed, no names, just on a screen type of individuals. And I spent hours and hours and like days and weeks and months would go by, 16 hours a day on a computer learning from these folks, as to how to hack this, how to build this, how to do this. And I was just like guzzling that information. It was just like, it was like magic. And those were the folks that, in my opinion, control the world because these guys can do anything. And what's dangerous about these folks is that they will never advertise what they do. You will never know who it is because they don't talk about what they do. Those that get caught are the stupid ones with a big ego. The real dangerous ones, they say nothing and they can do anything. I mean, when I learned about cybersecurity, essentially I had to learn how to hack. And so, because in order to protect the network, you have to understand how it can be hacked. And the best person to teach you how to hack is a hacker. So, how these guys work and why they're so efficient is that they don't use off the shelf stuff. They build their own software, they build their own hardware. So, there's no way you're going to detect them. There's no way you're going to see them coming. And so they taught me how to do certain things and how to build certain things and how to test certain things and what have you. And then fast forward, a few years, an ex-girlfriend of mine was working, at an insurance company, and she just happened to mention that they were in discussions with some firm to come test their network for security and all that stuff, and they were charging them some crazy amount of money, like I don't know, like $70,000 or $80,000, at the time, just for like 80,000 bucks. What the hell are they doing for 80,000 bucks? And she's like, I don't know. They're checking to make sure our network is secure. I'm like, but I can do this for you. And she obviously she laughed it off. Women, you can do this for me. I'm like, yeah, I'll check it for you, no problem. How much are they charging you? And I think it was like 70 or 80. And I'm like, fine, I'll do it. I had to pick some stupid number. I like for 20, I'll do it for 20. And remember, this is like a 16, 17-year-old kid here asking for 20 grand. Like I've never seen 20 grand in my life. And I'm like, so she's like, okay, I'll ask her. The next day she asks her, she comes back, she's like, okay, can you come in for a talk? I'm like, with who? With my boss. I'm like, for what? I'm like, didn't you say you want to test the network? I'm like, oh, so she said yes. I'm like, oh shit, all right. So I went there and I, gathered the information of what she wanted. I'm like, okay, no problem. So she's like, how long is this going to take? I'm like, it's going to take 2 days. She's like, 2 days for $20,000. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, but if there's a problem with your network, I'm going to tell you. And I'm going to tell you exactly how to fix it too. So she was laughing. She's like, well, and what if you can't? I'm like, what if you can't? Well, you just don't pay. It's no problem. Like, you have the best guarantee. If I don't deliver, you don't pay me. No problem. The next day, there was like 17 holes in their entire network. I found most of them, but I pinged some of these guys that I speak to. I'm like, guys, I need your help. It's my first job, so to speak. This is what I found. And they were very impressed. They're like, wow, okay, you found almost all of them. There was maybe like, I missed like 10 or 12% of it. So they went in and they pointed to me to the elements that I'd missed. And they're like, okay, then this is what's needed and this is how you fix them. So I went back, put down a report and all that stuff and sent it to her. And I'm like, here you go. And so when they fixed it, we tested again, then it was solid, it was fine. And this is how I got into it. I'm like, wow, man, this is one, it's like crazy fascinating. And two, it's a shitload of money, So, and it grew from there, and obviously, my education became much deeper, learning, a lot more into the space, with intrusion attacks and, red herrings and all that stuff, that's involved, and started collaborating with, a lot of folks much more intelligent than I am. And this is how I was constantly learning, because there are folks out there that are like seriously dangerous in the way they think. I mean, some of these folks, you can't give them an electric toothbrush because they will hack it into something that will somehow steal funds from you. Yeah. So that's where that knowledge and experience comes from, and why I'm a big proponent of creativity and security, because a big part of security is being creative. If you're a ghost, no one will know what to attack. And so when we set up your security module, we essentially try to make you into a ghost as much as possible so that you're not as apparent. So if somebody wants to attack you, what are they going to attack? They have to know what to attack first, right? And if they don't know, well, then it's no problem. They can attack you, but they can't attack the setup. So again, this is where the value of understanding this and applying it to something as important as money becomes crucial. And we do this. I mean, this is one of our main highlights. It's because I don't treat this as just another IT job. Even though it's Bitcoin is IT, it's way more than IT. I mean, this is money. You are your own bank. That concept really has to sink in properly.
Mm. You also said on a call that we did before, you brought up like the USB and the USB-C ports that you might find on a train or on a plane or in a hotel room, for example.
Yeah.
And you you blew my mind. Like, yeah, don't plug into those things to charge.
Never, unless you have a data blocker. You can buy data blockers from Amazon. So if you're not sure about what you're plugging into, you plug your device into that data blocker and then that data blocker into that port of that public device. And if there's some funny business going on, something trying to siphon the data, it'll block it. But you would need to have that little thing with you and use it all the time. Most folks, they just plug in blind and they pray nothing happens. But it's extremely easy to steal information. We used to do it for fun, at school and college. Yeah, we'd set up, like USB ports, around campus, free charging or free whatever. They'd always be full. There's always someone plugging in their device because it's charging their device, but it's also we're behind the scenes, reading everything that's going on, and then sometimes we go up and I'm like, hey, buddy, you never do this. And like, why? Well, because that email password, is it? And then they look at you, it's like, what the hell? Like, yeah, like you sent an email from here to here, you did this, 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 and this, then you like they freak out. Like, how did you know this? Well, because it's all logged here. Like obviously the campus knew what we were doing, but it was an experiment. And it worked. They were always full.
Mm-hmm.
And so the campus understood that if it was that easy to do, that this is a serious problem. And so they put out these rules that no one's authorized to connect unauthorized gimmicks. But who's going to control this? If I wanted to go in the middle of the night and like swap out the USB thing, nobody would know. There's like hundreds of them on campus where you're going to check every single one of them every day. No one's going to do it.
So for those people,
That's how easy it is.
so for those people that are freaking out now because they've done the exact thing either with their phone or their laptop straight into a USB receiving device, hotel room, obviously, even in like the hotel lobby, they're all over the place now. These things, airport
Yeah, yeah,
lounges,
yeah.
everywhere. Um,
The simplest thing everyone should be carrying with them if you travel a lot is a data blocker. They're not expensive. They're like under $10.
right. So
But
that's one thing.
yeah,
If
have one or two of them on you on handy.
Right. What if you just plug in straight into the electrical mains? Please tell me there's nothing like, if I plug
No,
into the socket in an
no,
airport.
electrical mains. You mean electricity? No,
Yeah.
usually those aren't usually problematic. It's
All
usually
right.
more the data ports like USB, that
Mm,
type of thing.
mhm.
But I haven't really encountered anything with electricity, no, because that's
Okay.
more involved. That's more involved, like behind the scenes. It's not as easy to.
And I met a guy recently at the Free Cities Foundation um, conference, Liberty in Our Lifetime, in Prague back in October, and he had a little device on his phone. I'm like, what is that? And he said it's like a microphone jack that you plug in to your phone, so your phone thinks you've connected headphones. Whereas it's
Mhm.
really going to nothing, so and it blocks off the microphone, from what I can understand.
Yes, yes.
Uh
If
huh.
you're afraid of somebody spying on you or activating your microphone without your knowledge, you can use such devices. Yeah, sure.
God damn, man. We live in a fucked up world right now.
Well, like I mean, technology, it works on both sides.
Yeah.
It works both for good, but it's also applicable for bad. And the bad part is more fun. This is why it's so enticing and usually a lot more profitable. People that do bad things with tech, it's because it's lucrative. They don't do it just, I mean, some of them do it for fun, yes, but most of them do it for money.
So, throughout your 2, 3 decades studying and working within cybersecurity, what's the craziest thing that you saw that stands out in memory that was the biggest challenge for you to overcome?
In terms of what, cybersecurity?
Yeah.
Well, it's how careless people are when it comes to it. They don't take it seriously. Whether it's
So even big
businesses or
corporations that are storing all of
yeah,
these, like Ledger, a classic example again. Sorry, Ledger team, but the hack comes in and all the addresses are taken. So if they've
yeah.
shipped out, right? Yeah, that's a
So
company that you think should be on top of their cybersecurity.
most companies are not on top of anything. Most companies look after cost more than the actual benefit to it. This is what their primary concern is, cost. And the bigger the company, the cheaper they are when it comes to these things. Um, in my experience, small businesses are much better set up than big ones. Big ones, because of the bureaucracy and red tape
Mm.
and shortcuts and cost cutting and all that stuff, their setups are horrible.
And they're a honeypot
There's
too. Like any credit card company is just a pure honeypot
do
for
you know
hacker.
how bad hospital systems are?
No.
They're one of the worst worldwide hospitals,
Wow.
depending on where you are around the world. Jesus Christ. Like, you better pray nothing happens to that system because it's like as easy as blowing through a straw door for someone who, knows what they're doing. It's like stupid easy. And because it's so expensive to solidify all this, and it's an ongoing expense, it's not like a set it and forget it. Cybersecurity is not like, okay, I bought this thing and now I'm cool. No, you bought this thing, you set it up, now you got to stay on top of it to make sure that, whatever news coming out, you're still on top of that, because just because you bought a piece of equipment doesn't mean the smart folks on the other side are going to stop coming up with creative ways to break in. They're not. So it's an ongoing thing. This is why like I said, with Bitcoin, the setups, it's an ongoing process to ensure that your setup is bulletproof at all times. And don't think if you're going to go with a third-party custodial that you're going to be any safer, because they have to do the same thing. Most of them will not do this. So with them, double the risk. You have the primary risk that they screw you over and rug you, which is the most probable. And second of all, if they're not up to date with whatever they have to be up to date with, they can be victims of an attack just as easily as you can.
And they
So,
face regulatory pressure as well, right? This is one other
but
concern.
that's an even bigger one. So they have, again, they have to play by rules made by those that designed the system, created to steal from you. How does that make sense? Right?
Yeah. All right. Well, we need your
So
rabbit hole story. Like everybody loves to know how people come into Bitcoin. So there you are. You're a consultant, freelance, or you've got your business. Either way, you're doing well. What's going on? Bitcoin comes up somewhere, somehow. Why? How? When?
most people come to Bitcoin the painful way, and I'm no exception. Um, I witnessed what happened in Lebanon firsthand when the banking system completely wiped out the entire country's life savings. Okay,
Were
so if
you
you
were
had
you
some,
living there?
no, you didn't have to live there, but if you had some money in a bank account, it was gone.
Hmm.
So essentially, what happened, regardless of the amount, whether you had 10,000 or 10 billion, the result was the same for both of you. You went to bed one night, you woke up the next day, nothing was working. So you go buy your buying stuff, your credit cards, decline, decline, decline. What's going on? You call the bank, there's no answer. Nobody's picking up the phone. Then you wait a while, then you understand that all accounts are frozen, money's blocked, blah 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 blah. Nobody's allowed to withdraw their funds. Worse, if you had US dollars in a Lebanese bank account, they illegally converted it to the local currency, which was hyperinflated to some stupid amount. So if you had like $1 million US in a Lebanese bank account, now it's worth like, I don't know, $200 or something stupid like that. So when you see something like this happen and you understand that this is not a joke and that this is going to continue happening, it's not because it's Lebanon that it's like a shithole. Okay, fine. People might argue this, but it had nothing to do with the country. It had to do with the fact that it's based on a corrupt fiat system. And ultimately, they're all going to fail. It's just a question of when your turn comes. So folks that think that, because they're so rich or maybe they live in a certain part of the world that they're going to be okay, that's a very dangerous position to put yourself in. It's almost like you're like waiting for financial suicide because no one is immune. If you're using fiat, they're all built the same way. They're all built to fail. And now we're at the end of that, of that cycle where the cracks are so big, like how are you going to repay the debt that's out there? It's impossible. And so the currency is going to continue to inflate. Inflation is going to continue to rise. Nothing's going to fix it. You can't fix it from, who said that? Jeff Booth. You cannot fix the system from within the system. It's impossible. It's like if you want to understand nothing, just understand that line of his. You cannot fix this system from within the system. You have to replace it completely. And before Bitcoin, we had nothing to replace it with that couldn't be coerced or manipulated. There was nothing. This is why this is such a big deal. And the fact that it's a fixed finite supply that no one, no matter what they try, can fuck around with, that's the key. And when people realize this, like really, it really clicks, that's when you're going to see like the tsunami of panic. And this is why all the big boys now are, doing whatever they can to get into the space. They're not coming in for charity, that's for sure. They understand as well that if they do nothing, their billions and trillions, they're going to be worth toilet paper, just like the folks in Lebanon, Venezuela, Argentina. They're no different. They get it. The difference is they have a team of 100 people studying this all day long. So they are way smarter than most folks, and they know exactly what they're doing. And if they're coming in, let me tell you, if you don't want to do your homework, just look at what they're doing. They're not doing it because they're retards and gambling on a maybe. They're doing it because they're 1,000,000% sure this is the way to go. So if you're sitting on the sidelines doing nothing, waiting to see maybe these crazy Bitcoiners theory comes true, in my opinion, you are going to have one of the worst lessons in your life coming your way, because I've lived it. It puts you in a very, very dark place. The stories in countries like Argentina, Lebanon, and that go through something like this, they're not told. They're hidden. The suicide rates are through the roof. Good people end up doing crazy, crazy things because they have to. The stories of folks going into banks with guns, that happens. These were not criminals. These were moms and dads that went into the bank with a gun to retrieve their own money because they had a dying mother or father that they had medical bills to pay for. So, but the mainstream media, they automatically spotlighted them as criminals. So when you understand that everything in the current system is rigged, it's a lie, it's a criminal organization in full force, you start taking proper action. But until most people get impacted directly, I don't believe they will act. That's the problem. You have to get screwed yourself to understand, okay, shit, maybe now I have to do something. Bitcoiners around the world, us included, are trying to put you in a position where you don't have to go through the pain, but you just have to listen to common sense and take some sort of action. No one's telling you jump in blind 100%. But if you do nothing, you are guaranteed to lose everything. In the same way that those that thought they were billionaires, they were set for 10 generations. Now they're living on the street. Those that actually are still alive, not counting those that went and jumped off building roofs because they couldn't deal with with the reality of their new situation now. It's one thing if you're a young individual, you can somehow rebuild yourself. But if this shit happens to you when you're 60 or above, you're not rebuilding anything. And if you've got people depending on you, the psychological impact that it has on your mental health, like I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And you know,
Yeah, getting through to that older generation is a tough one because of all the reasons that you've just outlined. That they've played the game, that they've done the 4 to 5 decades of the hard graft and the jumping through the loopholes and trying to beat the system, and they're good now. Maybe they've got the mortgage paid off and just leave me alone, let me go and play golf. I don't want to put any more time and thought and energy into this whole freaking system because subconsciously we all know it's sucking us dry of every ounce of our freaking energy. And then when you put this in front of them, they're like, nope, don't want to know. Don't want to know. That's for the young guys. Whereas they're the most important people that should be protecting the wealth that they spent so many decades, earning. It's really tough, and I hope conversations like this get shared around with people that are 60, 70, even 80 years of age, and that help is out there for them to get onto a Bitcoin standard, or at least have something and not fear it, and have white glove service like yours. I guess that's one thing we should ask. How do you charge people? What does that look like if people want to engage?
our fees are fixed. We don't engage in any of the percentage-based systems, that others may do. Our prices are very transparent and fixed. We're a consultancy service, so we base our fees, hourly or by project. So we break down all the steps that are required. We put the project together. We give you the quote. You accept it. We proceed. It's as simple as that. And there's no hidden fees. There's no surprises after the fact. Everything is, crystal clear before you pay a single Satoshi.
Okay, so you accept
Yeah.
Bitcoin, you accept fiat. Obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
newbies will only have fiat.
We only accept Bitcoin. We are a Bitcoin only company.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, something then for the newbies to bear in mind that if
Yeah.
they you're right, then they'd have to stack some sats in the first place to be able
We've
to
had
pay
some
you.
folk. Yeah, exactly. If you don't have Bitcoin, we will help you in,
Mhm.
help you buying Bitcoin, not just to pay us, but just in general, so that you're aware, of how you can acquire some, whichever, road you prefer, whether it's a KYC or the peer-to-peer ones. It's no problem. I mean, we will teach you both of them, and you take whichever one you're more comfortable with. But whatever you pick, just get off zero. Like, don't linger around the zero line, because the time is running out for everyone to
Right.
to buy Bitcoin. Soon you will not be able to buy it anymore. You will be priced out of it, and the only way to get some is to earn it through a job.
So
Somebody
I'm
you
looking
offer
on
a
the website
service.
now. You've got book a call. People can just go to thebitcoinway.com,
Mhm.
hit the book a call tab, then they choose a date and a time, and that will be set up. And that will be with one of the three of you, or do you have a
Yeah,
slightly larger
yeah,
team?
exactly. Yes, no, we're the face of the companies. It'll be with one of the three of us. All first 30 minutes are complimentary. We offer a free 30-minute call to everyone. It's just to get to know one another. If you have questions about who we are, what we do, and all that stuff, this is what it's for. We get to know you a bit better as well, what you're looking for, where you're at in the Bitcoin journey. So it'll help us structure, our proposals
Mhm.
more efficiently that way.
And on the website, is there a list of those devices that you recommend, or does that come
No,
later?
no, no. That comes later, because we're
Okay,
constantly updating that list
right.
based on our tests and recommendations and things that come our way.
Okay. All right, Tony. Final question. If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
I would give it to the world, man. The number one advice I tell everyone is, don't be arrogant. Stop being arrogant. Arrogance is the detriment of all those that are resisting studying Bitcoin at the very least. You have to accept that we are living in historical times. We have never been in a situation like this before, where Bitcoin has never existed. It's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of folks because it's so new, but it's here. It's here to stay. Nothing can stop it now. And get off zero. Get as close to one Bitcoin as you can, as fast as possible, because very soon, once the big boys come in, I don't believe there'll be any Bitcoin left to buy. They will take everything. And that's when you'll wake up one day with a heart attack when you look at the price.
And that is not a hyperbolic statement. I've had
No,
Luke Mikic on the show. If people want to go back and check that one out, and we go into the discussion of what happens when there are no more Bitcoin left on exchanges, which could be a reality. Like people have to wake up and realize this because as soon as these ETFs get, and just one example, if and when an ETF does get approved, uh, one of these companies is going to have to go out and buy the underlying asset to be able to offer the ETF in the first place. And that means a shit ton of Bitcoin is going to leave the exchanges because they will have to do it through regulated exchanges. I don't even think they'll be able to buy legally directly from the miners. I'm not sure. I would,
that's
I
to be
would,
seen. That's
yeah,
to be seen. But there's so much money out there. I mean, it's
yeah,
just math. I mean, it's
trillions,
literally
trillions.
it's Greg Foss said it. It's grade 11 math.
Yeah,
There's like about $900 trillion worth of assets globally. Okay. If only 10% of those 90 trillion goes into Bitcoin, and it's not such an impossibility, 90, like 10% is nothing. Just do the math. There's 16 or 17 million Bitcoin left, because the other ones, so many of them have been lost. So let's say we're assuming there's 17 million left. There's less than 2 million of those left on exchanges to buy. The others are hodled by folks that are not selling no matter what. So take 90 trillion and drop it into that tiny number. What does that give you?
Mm-hmm.
It's not rocket science, it's basic math.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to understand nothing but comprehend simple math, just do that calculation.
Well, I hope people do it, and I hope they pick up the phone to you, and well, to one of the other guys too, whoever they get on the phone with. They look a little younger than you, Tony. So
They, they are they are younger than me. But
uh,
we're all pumping on all cylinders, so it's all good.
we're all the same age. We're all 21, right?
Of course, man. 21
Yeah,
for
exactly.
for now for now not for now and forever.
Well, we'll put the link in the show notes to thebitcoinway.com. Pretty easy to remember anyway. If
Yeah.
people want to reach out to you on Twitter, that will be in the show notes as well. Is there anywhere else you want to direct people, or any
No,
final
that's
closing
that's
message?
those are the main places. The website, Twitter, we're very active there. You can follow me directly at V4BTC or the Bitcoin Way account, at the Bitcoin Way underscore, or of course the website, on the contact form. We're happy to speak to anyone, and we're looking forward, to onboarding as many people as possible.
Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everything you're doing for Bitcoin, man. It's
Thank,
nice to
thank you
know
for
we've got
having me,
a
man.
cybersecurity professional on our side, and yeah, let's keep pushing forward. Thanks so much.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. See you soon.
Cheers.